Well, welcome to Unity of Charlotte. Let me get my official reading here. My name is Reverend Sally Robbins, and I'm blessed to be leading you in your service today, giving the talk as well. And if you're new to Unity and you're wondering what exactly is this place called Unity, we are offering a deep, mature experience of God through the practice of Unity principles. Simply put, we are here to love, grow, and serve, and that's why you'll see it on all of our slides. That's what we do. We believe spiritual community enhances our experience of life, making it richer, deeper, and more expanded. We could all go sit in caves and meditate, and that would be kind of fun, but don't you like having people around every now and then? I kind of do, so this is why we get together, and we recharge our spiritual batteries every week. We do have a youth program for those of you that are new to us. So bring your children, your grandchildren. Our kids get to have wonderful lessons of their own, and they do creative crafts. It's just a lot of fun. And if you're joining us for the very first time today, we're grateful that you're here. And if you have not already gotten a welcome packet, it sounds like I'm popping my peas. Let me move this out a little. If you haven't already received a welcome packet, feel free to get one out in the lobby when you go back out. And one of our welcome team, you can recognize them. They have the blue ribbons on their tags. They can give you the answer to everything about Unity of Charlotte, including what the meaning of life is, if you ask. They're very, very knowledgeable people. So take advantage of our welcoming team. And if you're in need of spiritual support, if there's something that you really want to get anchored in prayer, that could be for something that's happening that's really good in your life, or a challenge maybe that you're going through, just be aware that we also have a team that you can fill out a prayer request form. They're also in the lobby. You can also go online. If something happens during the week, feel free to go online. Those go right into a special email box. They're confidential, and we would be happy to pray on whatever challenge you are going through. With our opening prayer. Let's take a deep breath in and then let it out. Take another cleansing breath in and let it out. With every breath, become fully present in this moment. Come to that place within that lets go of all it took to get here today, all the hustle and bustle and the things that your to-do list of what you've got to do when you leave. Just set that aside. And just come and be cognizant of your very breath moving in and out. Feel the chair under you supporting you. And as you continue to turn inward, let's go to that place inside each one of us that is holy, that is pure, that is divine. For each one of us has that divine essence within. We might do things to cover it up. You might even forget about it for a while, but it's always there, always gently calling us back to that place of original divinity. Because we know that when deep calls unto deep, deep responds to deep. And so we come together with the intention this morning to settle into that place of divine origination. That place where we know is unchanging. Though the world around us might be swirling and changing at a rapid pace, this place is holy. This place is that deep understanding within us that all is happening for our good, that there is abundance, there is prosperity, there is health, there is right relationships flowing to us and through us. And so we simply allow that which is ours to come to us right now. Because when we are at this vibration of our divine selves, all is possible. There are no limits. There are no beliefs that are holding us back. We simply surrender and allow Spirit to have its way with us. And so I set the intention for this service that there is clarity, there is focus, there is wisdom, there is an acknowledgement of that higher self. There is high consciousness. And so I know that hearts are being cracked open right now. Minds are being cracked open right now, ready to receive the seed that Spirit would have planted. And so what needs to be said will be said. What needs to be heard will be heard. What needs to be felt will be felt. And all is unfolding perfectly, beautifully, naturally, organically in this service. The music touches us. The talk lifts us. The warm handshakes and smiles and hugs take us back to that place of divine origination. And so as I've spoken these words, I know that they have already moved mountains. They have already allowed that which is possible to come forth. And so I just give great thanks, knowing that as I have declared these words, they are done. We simply let them be so. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.
Faith can move mountains. This I know is true. You can move mountains if you have faith in you. Faith can work magic. It's hidden in the wind. And here is the secret. It's all right here within. Imagine a world of promise just waiting to come in view. If you just believe, then all you'll achieve. Just say the word, and it's true. Yes, faith can move mountains, shift the course of seas. We can move mountains if we believe in we. Imagine a world of promise just waiting to come in view. If you just believe, then all you'll achieve. Say the word, and it's true. Yes, faith can move mountains, shift the course of seas. We all can move mountains if we have faith in we.
So, today I'm going to be talking about loving each other, because this is the month of love, right? So, loving each other. I think that's probably one of the hardest ones, isn't it? Even beyond loving ourselves, loving God. Well, I'll be talking about that next week, and then Reverend Jim's going to be talking on the last Sunday of the month. But loving each other. I just heard a statistic yesterday that most people would rather have a dog than have an intimate partner. Because it's just easier. The dog doesn't talk back to you. The dog doesn't create a mess. Doesn't clean up, after himself. He just, the dog is a dog. And I thought therein lies a lot of the problems, isn't it? when we're not even willing to get to that place of looking at how we can interact with each other. So that's what I want to explore today, is how can we interact with each other, because the bottom line is, and I'm going to give you the bottom line right at the beginning of the talk. The bottom line is we can only go so far in spiritual growth by ourselves. After that, we need each other. Would you agree? We need each other, because I remember my 8th grade geology teacher had a tumbler. And he would take like geodes, these rough geodes, and he would throw them in there, and it would make this incredible racket as it was being tossed around and around and around and around in this tumbling machine. But it would come out this nice, smooth, wonderful amethyst or whatever it was. And I've often thought how many times I have been tossed around in the tumbler of life. Anybody with me on that? With a few people that maybe had some sharp edges that had to come up against my sharp edges, and we had to soften each other. And yet that was the process of me turning into a beautiful gem. And it's still going on. It's still going on. It will go on to the day I draw out my last breath. I love Richard Bach's quote, "Here's how to find out if your mission on earth is finished. If you're alive, it isn't." That's how we know. And so when people come into our lives, I'll speak for myself. When someone comes into my life, and maybe they're a bit challenging, they're not in the same wavelength as I am, I get to practice a lot of wonderful spiritual qualities. It might be patience. It might be tolerance. Or acceptance. I've never liked that word tolerance. I like acceptance a lot better. And it really might just be having the wisdom to allow someone else to be who they are. Can I get an amen to that? We've lost the discourse of just even allowing ourselves to have differing opinions just for the sake of a conversation. So I remember Joel Goldsmith. I read his biography by Lorraine Sinkler, which is a fabulous book. And I remember how he said that if you find a great teacher, someone that can teach you spiritual principles, someone that can really hold you in a space, even when you don't understand what's going on, they can lift you up to that place of just knowing the spiritual perfection of where you are. When you find a teacher like that, you can take off up to 5 years of spiritual growth. That's pretty significant, isn't it? Any shortcuts, I'm there. So I have spent my life looking for teachers. One of my very first teachers was a woman who called every difficult person in her life a master teacher. And she said, every time someone comes into my life, she named her mother-in-law as a primary example. She said, she is my master teacher. Because when I'm with her, it's very difficult to be the loving person that I want to be. And yet, that's what she's here to teach me to do. It's easy to love somebody when they're loving back, right? The hard part is being loving even when someone is unskilled at loving and shows up in your life. I like to use that word unskilled because not everyone is kind and gracious and compassionate. Would you agree? And some of them don't have the skill to even know how to be that. So here I am expecting people to live up to a certain level, and if they're not even skilled in that, that's like beating my head against a wall. So I've had to learn to recognize that even in the face of situations where people are not acting loving, kind, compassionate, caring, I just had it happen yesterday. I love how when I do a talk, The universe drops these things right into my life that I get to practice them. I had someone who was very rude to me yesterday. Someone who is on the same spiritual path as me that I would have thought would have known better. And yet, she was having a moment. And I happened to be where she was projecting at. Have you been in that situation? So I just realized, I get to practice what I'm preaching here. That I get to know the truth of her, even if she is forgotten in the moment. I get to know that she is kindness and lovingness and graciousness. Even when I cannot see it in her, I get to know that. Let me tell you, that is hard. Even for someone who's been practicing for years, it is still hard. And yet, that's what I'm here to do. Because our master teachers are the ones who invite us, either in a positive or negative way. A master teacher can be someone very positive in our life, right? And a master teacher can be also in a negative way. They help us reconnect with the divine quality that we have forgotten. Because Lord knows I have forgotten how to be loving in certain cases. I love when I pray and I meditate in the morning and then I get in my car and I go out on the highway and someone cuts me off. That's when I get to know, do I really know this stuff? Do I really practice this each and every moment? So, if you're wondering what makes someone a master teacher, let me just give you a few questions. Someone might be bubbling up in your head right now, but let me just give you some questions. Is there someone close to me who habitually irritates me? Could be a spouse, a family member, or even a coworker. Is there someone who brings out the best or worst of me? Is there someone with whom I still have an emotional charge, even though I haven't seen them in years? Hoo-hoo. They could be dead. And whenever they enter your mind, there's a charge there. Is there someone that I gossip about, talk negatively about, or even call unflattering names? I used to work with a woman who had a very contentious divorce. And every time she talked about her husband, she said, "Oh yeah, that's what Art the Fart did." That was her name for him. And we got to hear all about her ex-husband. Did any of you get a ping when you heard these questions? Or is there someone coming up that might just fall into that category of being your master teacher? Well, congratulations. I was watching the Oprah Winfrey Show. Remember back in the days of the Oprah Winfrey Show? God, I feel old when I'm saying that. But when she had her show, she started bringing on Iyanla Vanzant, like once a week, who I think is just a treasure. And Iyanla would come on and start talking with audience members about situations that they were in. And this one woman got up and she goes, "I can't believe this jerk of an ex-husband I have. He's just horrible. And she's going on. And Iyanla goes, "Wait, stop. This is what she said to her. He isn't a jerk. He is a beloved child of God who agreed to come into your world and help you remember who you really are, a beloved child of God." Yes. That stopped the audience in its track. Because we can all relate to that, right? Because at some level, the people that are my master teachers, we had an agreement. Okay, you come in and be the jerk this time around. And you annoy and irritate me so I can learn this. And yet we forget that, don't we? We forget that. And yet we all have that. My prayer this morning was the divine origination that all of us have. It's so easy to other others, isn't it? And that's where we get into the separation. As soon as we forget our divinity and someone else's divinity, that's what I call hell. Because that's when we are not practicing that we're all here to live a life in heaven, if we so create it. When we are centered in the spiritual knowledge that we are one with God, It doesn't matter what another person says or does, right? Because that doesn't affect who I am. And that takes a very strong and spiritually mature person to stay in that place day in and day out, even when the slings and arrows are coming at us. That's the test. So here's the truth. We'll always have master teachers in our lives. That's just the way it is. And we should be thanking them for giving us the awareness of what needs to be healed. One of the best examples of that came from one of our political candidates, Cory Booker. I found this on Facebook. It was going around Facebook a while back. Long before he was running for any, I think he was the mayor of Newark at the time he wrote this. He says, when they criticize you, love them for teaching you humility. When they heap scorn upon you, love them for helping you discover your resiliency. When they doubt you, love them for giving your dreams greater courage. When they point out your faults, love them for their accuracy. When they wound you, love them for showing your capacity to forgive. When they try to stop you, love them for making your resolve stronger. When they cast you into darkness, love them for helping you discover your inextinguishable light. And when you stand victorious, when your love has conquered the impossible challenge, invite them to stand with you so that they too can see love's power and possibility. Isn't that beautiful? Woo! Cory Booker. And I think about this often, that maybe what's happening in my life is there to teach me resiliency or understanding, or that no one can ever put out my inextinguishable light. That's what is here right now for us. If we simply allow our perspective to just shift, just slightly. And here's another truth. The only relationship we ever have is where? With whom? Ourselves. And then the other players in our play get to come and act out what our beliefs are. Oh, you don't think you're worthy? Guess what? You're going to have a couple people showing up telling you you're not worthy. You don't think you're lovable? There might be a few people that show up and tell you that too. And yet the truth never changes. You're not those things. And yet you keep the universe is simply giving you the feedback again and again so that you can go, that is not the truth of who I am. And guess what? When you do that, those people stop showing up because you've learned the lesson. They're simply there to help you reinforce what you already know. I met an amazing man back in 2008. On May 17th, 2008, as a matter of fact, I met this man. His name is Colonel Glenn Frazier. Now, Colonel Glenn Frazier served our country in World War II. And as a matter of fact, Ken Burns, the fabulous documentarian, did a whole wonderful series. It was called The War, and it was about World War II. And he featured Colonel Frazier in this. But I got to meet him in person because he was signing books at an event I was at. His book is entitled Hell's Guest, because this is what happened to Colonel Frazier. On April 9th, 1942, he became part of the largest surrender of the United States Army in its history. 78,000 American and Filipino troops had to then endure the Bataan Death March. You've heard of that, right? Where they were literally marched from one place to another to a prison camp. Hundreds of prisoners every day were dying as they were making this trek. Then when they got to the prison camp, they had horrific conditions at this Camp O'Donnell where he had to stay because there was disease, starvation, and abuse. Well, in 1942, he was shipped to Japan, to another concentration camp. He spent nearly 3 years there. Now, the Americans did their best to try to sabotage the Japanese, even in the prison camp. They put rocks in the cement mixers, and they drilled holes in the bottoms of oil barrels so that the oil would spill out. They poured sand into the gas tanks of the vehicles, and they even loosened the blocks of a submarine that was under repairs so it slid into the bay upside down. But those soldiers paid the price for that. Because during his imprisonment, he survived double pneumonia, torture, a week of isolation in a covered pit, and beating so frequent that they became routine. This was just a way of life. Can you imagine 3 years of that? And at one camp, a guard bayoneted him in the knee as punishment for not lifting his legs high enough while he was marching. And then he almost lost his leg to gangrene because of that. So then, of course, they were freed, and he went home and went on to create a family and a successful business. But one thing was happening. One thing was happening with him. He couldn't forget. He was telling me how this became like his nightmare long after that horrific event had happened. And he realized there was no way he could continue on in that way. This is what he said to me. Let me show you the pictures. There he is in 1942. And this is an actual picture of the Bataan Death March, which is from his book, and he's in that circle. He identified himself there. But this is what he said to me when I met him in 2008. He said, "For 30 years I hated, and what I discovered was that I needed to forgive. I'm grateful that I survived, and I can tell the story today that hating is not worth the effort." It was literally eating him alive to continue hating. He had to figure out a way to forgive and move beyond the torture and abuse that he had come his way. Could you forgive someone that had tortured you like that? I mean, talk about a master teacher. That's someone he's doing his spiritual work, let me tell you. Colonel Fraser had master teachers far beyond what many of us will ever have. In terms of cruelty, he created his own hell in his mind, but he decided to change his mind about his captors. Because at the end of the day, he said to me, "Who's in prison now?" He said, "I was in a prison of my own making. I had to break out of it and move beyond the hate." So, what qualities were born in him through his spiritual practice? Forgiveness, compassion, courage, resilience, acceptance. To see somebody walk through that is an amazing process. And the man that I met in 2008 was free of his inner demons. He taught me a very valuable lesson. And sometimes people can be our master teacher for the opposite reason. So this is James Atterbury. James Atterbury was a teacher for many years. This is Larry Israelson when he was his student. He was 12 years old at the time. And Larry Israelson lived with the idea that he'd done something to his teacher that he could not live with. He had to apologize to his teacher. So he would go online and he would Google him, and he couldn't ever find anything. Well, then one day, an article appeared in the Oregonian paper. That's where they lived. And I guess he recognized him from his picture. So Larry sent a letter to the newspaper and said, "Would you please pass this on to Mr. Atterbury?" And a reporter there thought, this sounds like a good story. I need to follow up on this. And so the writer of the story, Tom Holman Jr., ended up talking to Larry, and this is what Larry said to him. He said, I was in middle school with Mr. Atterbury, and Mr. Atterbury was my teacher. What most people did not know was that Mr. Atterbury was gay. And back in that time, you could not tell someone that you were gay. You would lose your job. So Mr. Atterbury kept that to himself, but people had suspicions, and some of the students made fun of Mr. Atterbury, and some students were picking on Larry, and because Larry's name rhymes with fairy and Atterbury, they started calling him names and picking on him. And every day this was going on. Children can be cruel in their own way, can they not? So Larry was just, he even one of the students said, we're going to have a fight. And he thought, well, the guy's bigger than me. And he took a bunch of hard punches because he didn't want to be seen as weak. That's what the torture he was going through. Finally, one day he said, I can't take it anymore. I have to just leave the class. So he requested to transfer out of Mr. Atterbury's class. And when the principal said to him, why do you want to leave Mr. Atterbury's class? He goes, he couldn't tell him the reason. He said, I just want to go. So he was transferred out. Mr. Atterbury never knew why he left. And Mr. Atterbury, they had a good relationship. He would say, look, you're going to do some great things, son. I'm really proud of you. And he had established what he thought was a good relationship. And then all of a sudden, Larry's gone. And he never knew what had happened to him. Larry felt terrible about that. And so his letter that he sent to the Oregonian was, Mr. Atterbury, I'm so sorry. This is what happened. I'm really sorry for how I could have handled this so much better. So they ended up connecting, and lots of forgiveness happened there. Mr. Atterbury did remember Larry. But the major thing that I thought was so exciting about this story was this. The writer of the story, Tom Hallman, as he's reading and he's talking to Larry and he's writing this story, he remembered something that happened to him that he was still carrying great shame about. Shame is a corrosive feeling, isn't it? And you can feel it again and again and again, and it comes up. And this is what he had to say. He said, my third grade teacher organized a secret Christmas gift exchange. Now, this is Tom going way back. Tom's in his 60s when this is happening. And he says, on the big day, we sat in a circle to open our gifts in front of our classmates. The teacher instructed us to announce the name of the gift giver, who would stand to be roundly applauded. Every kid ripped open a fancy package containing a new toy. Then it was my turn. The teacher handed me something that looked like it had been wrapped in paper that was clearly reused. It was so wrinkled and retaped that the colors had faded. With everyone watching, I peeled back the paper and pulled out a cheap paperback book with torn and dirty pages. Tucked inside was a handwritten note identifying the girl who gave it to me. When I announced her name, my classmates started laughing. Her gift was yet another indication of just how different this girl was than the rest of us. She'd arrived late to class, her hair wet and unkempt. She didn't have friends, and the popular kids made fun of her because she wore old clothes and shoes. Only later in life did I understand that she obviously came from a terribly poor family. Even though this incident happened nearly 50 years ago, I remembered that afternoon as if it were yesterday. As the class laughed, this 8-year-old girl turned in her chair to hide her tears, while the teacher unsuccessfully tried to restore order in the class that had turned on the weakest among us. At that moment, I was worried that the popular kids would think that this girl and I were friends. So I didn't thank her or even acknowledge the gift. Only decades later did I realize that what I did next was unforgivable. I tossed the book in the garbage. Tom felt so bad. And it took writing the story about Larry Israelson and James Atterbury for him to remember the shame that he felt. And so he tried to look her up. Was unsuccessful. And yet he knew that he needed to do his own forgiveness work of something that he had done, that he felt great shame around. I think we can all relate to that. Because in our own skilled ways sometimes, we do things that we're not very proud of. I was talking with someone earlier this week about The Power of Eight, this wonderful book by Lynn McTaggart. And she has a fabulous scenario how she started. She actually started this at the Mile High Church in Denver, which is a CSL church, Center for Spiritual Living Church. And she got 8 people, 2 groups of 8 people to come together as a pilot program. And what they did was they set an intention. We're going to pray for the Middle East. We're going to pray for whatever. They picked something to pray for. And the 8 of them would get together. These 2 groups of 8 would get together. What she found was most remarkable, though, was that the people who were praying ended up having miracles happen in their own lives because they had taken their focus off of themselves and were praying for someone else. Are you with me? And so this concept, the power of 8, she says, is so powerful because as soon as you start saying, I'm here to help others, your whole world changes. So on page 197, she says, the key to a long and healthy life is living a life that concerns itself with meaning beyond satisfying the needs of number 1. I considered how dangerous some tenets of the self-help movement might be. All that focus on the self could ultimately be terrible for your health and highly unnecessary. The quickest route, hear me when I say this, the quickest route to rewriting your own life script was simply reaching out to someone else. And if that is true, the entire New Age premise of intention, using the universe as essentially a restaurant with you, the customer, ordering whatever dinner you happen to fancy, was wrong. It's not about getting. It's about giving. Getting what you wanted in your own life started with the readiness to give. Because as soon as you give, you get. That's the principle. We've somehow forgotten that first part. That as we give, we receive. John Paul Sartre was mistaken. Hell is not other people. Hell is thinking there are other people. Let that sink in. I'll say that again, Horace. Hell is not other people. Hell is thinking there are other people. This concept of loving each other is not about reaching out necessarily to Ned or to Horace or to Lawrence. It is about knowing that we are the one and that my brother here might need something that I can help make his life a little bit easier, his load a little bit lighter. And as I do that, as I lighten the load of someone else, guess what? The universe pays in spiritual coin. That's the essence of loving each other. And our master teachers are here to remind us that even when they are in the midst of their pain, we get to know the truth about them. That they are love, that they are kindness, that they are compassion, even when they're not showing that to us. Even when they're completely oblivious that that's even a concept. And I've met some of those people, have you? They're completely oblivious, and that's okay. That's not I get to stay in my spiritual lane. And I get to know the truth of who I am. That I am a loving being. And that I get to practice love no matter who shows up. I get to practice love in this month of love, this month of February, Valentine's Day, which is so commercialized now. Oh my God. Every commercial is, every kiss begins with K. Yeah, Kay Fuller, they're singing about you. Yes. And it's all about getting the right gift. What if we simply gave of ourselves? What if we gave to each other from a place of deep understanding and kindness? What if kindness was our highest quality that we lived by? This world could be transformed overnight. Because I know that the kindness that I put out there is not wasted ever, right? Even if it's not received, it's never wasted. No act of love or kindness ever is. So, the next time someone is irritating you, thank them. The next time someone shows up in your life and is just annoying you to no end, thank them. They're giving you the opportunity to grow as a spiritual master. Isn't that what we're here to do? I think so. Let's thank our master teachers. They are giving us the opportunity to rise to a new level. I can love the people in my life that love me so easily. But I get to practice at a higher level when someone shows up who is not skilled at loving and kindness. That's the real work we're here to do. That's what the month of love is all about. And if you've got someone in your life that is special, celebrate that. But I don't at the moment, but I've got all of you. I've got everyone in my world showing up. I get to love. What a fabulous opportunity to know that. This is a time of year when a lot of people get really depressed because they don't have someone special in their life. I've been down that road. I got married on Valentine's Day, and this was 25 years ago, and I had friends who said, don't get married on Valentine's Day. What if it doesn't work out? I'm like, we're going to be together forever. We weren't. It took me a while to get over Valentine's Day because of all the baggage that comes with it. So I'm inviting you this week, Valentine's Day week, let go of that baggage and know that you have such a big heart to create love in so many wonderful ways with your children and your grandchildren and your coworkers and the cashier at the Ingles. You get to choose. You don't have Ingles here, do you? Okay. Wherever you shop. This is our time to rise to the level of love. Are you with me? Yes. So let's just take that thought within. And just know the truth. That all is indeed showing up as either love or an opportunity to love in our lives. That each and every person in our life, skilled or unskilled, is giving us the opportunity to practice these spiritual principles and to show up as love even when love is not present in them. We know it's there. It might be hidden, but we get to practice it again and again and again. And so I just give great thanks for the opportunity for us to come together and to shift our mind into a new space around the love that we are sharing this month. The idea of love and Valentine's Day and whatever baggage we might be holding on to that, we simply let it go back into the nothingness from which it came. And know that the true meaning of it is to know that the love that we have is all there is. And we allow ourselves to be that love, for it to fill us up. For when we do that and give of ourselves, there can be no resentment. There can be no depression, no anger. We simply allow ourselves to be the vessels of love this week and beyond. So I give great thanks. Great thanks for the opportunity for this concept to now be embodied within us. Not just to be in our heads, but to move that 18-inch journey down to our heart, where we get to practice what we've learned and know the truth about us and everyone with whom we come in contact. It's all love, or the opportunity to love. And so we simply let it be so and say, thank you, Spirit, for all that is and all that is yet to be. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.
It was early one morning, just about the break of day. Angels came from from glory, they rolled that stone away. When the women came along, found that Jesus was gone. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh, ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When that first trumpet sounds, I'm gonna get up out of the ground, 'cause ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh, go yonder, Gabriel, stand on the land and see. I want you to blow that trumpet. Oh, you got your orders from me. End of the day, and it's almost dawn. Yeah, the day is coming on, but ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh, ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. You know, ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Well, when that first trumpet sound, yeah, I'm gonna get up out of the ground, 'cause ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh, ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. No, ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Well, when that first trumpet sounds, I'm getting up out of the ground, 'cause there ain't no grave gonna hold my body down.